Hello everyone, Peter Carson here, and welcome to our Valo Teamwork and Extranet User Manager webinar. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or later in the evening, depending on what time zone you're in. Let's start off with just some quick introductions. As I mentioned, my name is Peter Carson. I'm the president of Extranet User Manager. I'm going to be co-chairing the webinar today. I'm a SharePoint MVP and partner seller with Microsoft Canada. All my contact details are up on the slide here, and we're going to be sharing the slide deck and the recording after the fact as well, so you get all those details through there as well. And Henrik, I'll pass it over to you to do an intro on your side.
Yeah, thank you. So welcome everyone on my behalf as well. My name is Henrik Blofield and I'm a senior consultant at Valo Intranet, which is the internet in a box solution that we'll be co-presenting here together with Peter and Extranet User Manager. And one of my roles at Valo Intranet is to act as the product owner for the Valo Teamwork module, which is in specific something that we'll be speaking about today, basically as well. If you want to reach me, there's my email address, there's our website's address as well, and my Twitter handle as well for following what I do on social media.
Perfect, thanks Henrik. So I'm going to start with a little background before we get into product specific. And really what I want to talk about is this idea of sites in Office 365, which could be project sites, could be client sites, vendor sites, partner sites. There's lots of different examples of this. And this is actually going back to talks that I've given for a couple of years. I went back in my old slide decks and pulled out a slide that I put together back in 2015, so approaching 4 years ago now. And this was a wish list that I had for project management sites to say, okay, what are the things that we want to have in project sites to collaborate effectively, both within our organization and potentially with external folks as well. One of the things was having Exchange email and calendar support. Email was very important. This was pre-Slack, pre-Microsoft Teams days. So that was a key thing, was how do we manage that onslaught of email? How do we provide calendaring as part of that? I'm a big fan of OneNote, so having the ability to do ad hoc note-taking in OneNote as part of that site was very important. We wanted full SharePoint document libraries. This was very early days as Office 365 groups were just sort of starting to come out, and they were very stripped down document libraries within those. So I wanted full fidelity, the ability to create groups, to have filters and views and metadata and all the rich stuff that we have and love in SharePoint available to us as part of these project management sites. And obviously, extending that beyond just documents into custom lists, things like task lists, issues, risks, decisions that we need to have as part of the project sites. We often share our project sites with external users, so that ability to easily share externally was a key wish list item as well as integrating in external systems. You know, maybe there's finance, time tracking systems that we want to pull in as part of that project management site. We didn't have all that back in 2015. Things have really evolved over the past 4 years, and really what's driven that is where Microsoft has gone from an Office 365 groups point of view, and more importantly, more recently, from a Microsoft Teams perspective. So this is we call it the periodical table of Office 365 groups. It was put together by Matt Wade, who's another MVP. I use it in a lot of my presentations because it really distills down very easily what we're talking about with Office 365 groups. So for those that may not be familiar with 365 groups and what they are, they're really a collection of a variety of different products that make up the Office 365 product set. And the idea is when you create certain things in Office 365, you actually get a whole bunch of other things created as part of that. And what this is showing, if we start at the top here, let's say I create a modern team site in SharePoint today. In addition to getting that modern team site, I get everything that's highlighted in this blue bar across the middle here. So I get a planner plans if I want to do task management and simple project management. Planner is awesome for doing that. Obviously, I started by creating a SharePoint site, so I do get a SharePoint site, which has a OneNote notebook in it, which is a great place to keep shared notes across your team. You also get a stream video portal. So we often record sessions. In fact, we're recording this one here today. Stream is a great place to put it. We can upload those videos in. And not only does Stream provide, by its name, an easy way to stream those videos out to mobile devices, to desktop devices, but it also does some cool things like transcription of those videos. So if there's conversations like me talking here now, Stream will actually transcribe that, make it searchable. So I'm going to search back and I say, well, when was Peter talking about that particular point? I can search that transcript and get right to that point in the video in there. So it's a really cool thing that we're using more and more in a lot of our projects. Power BI workspace, having an analytics dashboard that you can bring up, say, project metrics and such as part of that project site is a key piece there. And we do get the Outlook integration from an email and a shared calendar. This is neat. What happens is when you create an Office 365 group, you actually get a shared inbox. And what that means is as you're doing email communications back and forth, you can actually CC, for example, the project, and that would go into that shared inbox. And then anybody who's a member of that project has visibility to those emails. Because one of the challenges with email is they're very personal and siloed. You know, that whoever's on that thread of discussion sees it and nobody else does. And if somebody joins the project midway through, they lose all that history. So if you CC it into that shared inbox, they can actually see that history. We'll get to Teams in a minute. That actually solves a lot of that problem, but we also get a shared calendar as well. So just like you can CC an email to have it go into the project shared inbox, you can actually include the project in the calendar invites. So if people want to see, well, what are all the meetings going on with this project? Whether I was involved in those meetings or not, what's the one place to go to see all that? That Outlook shared calendar is a very easy way to do that. So just like you would invite a meeting room, for example, if you wanted to book a resource as part of your meeting, just book the project itself, and there's a repository too there. If you use the Outlook integration into OneNote, keep your meeting notes in OneNote, it's connected to that calendar item. It's very easy for somebody to open up that calendar appointment, click the link to OneNote, see all the notes from that meeting. And even if they didn't participate in the meeting, they know who was there, what the agenda was, what the outcomes were. It's all shared within the project. And that's really the idea around Office 365 groups, is doing that sharing. And then the late addition on the right-hand side, you don't automatically get this as part of creating a SharePoint site, is a Microsoft team. So you have persistent chat, which is a way to combat email, to say, you know what, rather than send emails back and forth, let's do it in a chat that's already focused to the team, so that it doesn't end up in my big general inbox. You think of it almost as an inbox for each project, being the team for that project. You can do audio and video conferencing like we're doing here today, the discussions and such. So there's a lot of power there from a Teams point of view. In fact, when you create a Microsoft Teams, behind the scenes, you get the full Office 365 group, including the SharePoint site, as part of that. So if you're doing any sort of document management within Teams, those documents are actually managed under the hood in that SharePoint site. So you can see how interconnected all these different pieces of Office 365 are. So this is all cool. I can create Office 365 groups in a lot of different ways. It may be a Yammer group that I'm creating, an Outlook group, a planner plan, a SharePoint site, a Stream, a Microsoft Teams. They all create different things as part of that. That's awesome, but you can imagine that that can be a challenge as well. If everybody in the organization is able to do this, sprawl can become prevalent, and this becomes a Wild West, and you just lose track of the organization and where things are going from there. So that brings us to our next point, which is really around governance. You know, what are the options? So I'm going to turn it over to Henrik here. The Valo Teams product that we're going to talk about later is really about addressing the governance around Office 365 groups. So Henrik, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. So basically, as Peter was describing, with these modern tools that you get for collaboration, for cooperation within Office 365 groups, is really a great thing. So you get really state-of-the-art tools for things such as doing your notes, sharing videos, having communications in other channels than just a good old-fashioned email and all that, basically. And that is all great and good. And we have seen a lot of organizations really starting to use that and really getting excited about it, basically. And as it happens, when people get excited about these new tools that they get, that they may have been using in their private life before, as well as part of their schoolwork, like non-profit organizations and all that, they get excited and they start creating new groups. They start forming new groups and all that stuff, basically. And then they start basically. A lot of groups start start basically appearing in your Office 365 organization.
Now, Henrik, I've made you a presenter. If you want to share the slides out in advance through here, then I'll grab it back when it comes back over to my site.
Yeah. Let me just do that for just a second. Yes. Screen to, yep. All right. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Yeah. Let me just switch to a full screen view.
Perfect. Got it.
Yeah. All right. So let me just go back a few slides first. Basically, let me get back from here. Just a second. Sorry. All right. So basically, there's a number of challenges that you face eventually when people start using Office 365 groups in your organization, basically. So the things that you want to be able to control usually as part of your Office 365 governance strategy is really determining sort of who are the persons who can create Office 365 groups. Should they be limited only to white collar workers? Should only project managers be able to create new groups? Or should it be free for all so that anybody in your organization can create Office 365 groups? Basically, that's one of the decisions that you have to make, basically. Another thing that you may want to control is the names that can be contained in Office 365 groups. So basically, if you just let everybody create Office 365 groups, they may create groups with the names of HR, with the name of payroll, with the name of recruiting, and various different names, and they will have email addresses associated to those names of Office 365 groups as well. So basically, it can lead to situations where people mistakenly send emails to Office 365 groups when they actually believe that they are sending emails to internal addresses belonging to their internal systems instead. Basically, in the same way, you may want to implement naming policies so that, for instance, the department of the person who was creating the group will always be part of the group name, or that it will contain the country where that person is from, or things like that, basically, so that it is easier to see what groups are available, what groups have been created by whom, and especially find groups by other employees from your organization, basically. Also, you may want to utilize classifications so that when you create a group, you can determine whether it's an internal group or if it has high business impact, if it has medium business impact, if it has low business impact, and then use that to indicate to the members of the group on like what is the sensitivity level of messages or documents within that group, basically. And then later on, as Microsoft advances the classification capabilities, you'll be able to automatically apply information protection labels to the contents as well, so that, for example, for a high business impact group, all the content within there would automatically be protected by Azure information protection so that it cannot be shared externally, for example. Other things that you may want to do is have expiration policies, so that, for instance, new groups that would be created will be expired and deleted automatically within 1 year of creation, if you so want to determine it, so that you'll be able to control the sprawl of new groups within your organization, basically. Some other things are usage guidelines, so that you'll be able to present terms of use, terms of service, disclaimers, for instance, when you are creating new groups, so that people know what are for what purpose they should be creating groups in your organization, for and what rules they need to follow when interacting with Office 365 groups, basically. So yeah, these are all the kinds of things that that governance people, that IT administrators and management in a company typically thinks about when they want to implement Office 365 groups for their organization, basically. Then a very common question in terms of governance really is in Office 365, who can create Office 365 groups, basically. And by default, the answer is that everyone in your organization can create Office 365 groups. And that's really, of course, Microsoft has made that in purpose to make it as easy as possible for people to use these new tools, so that they would have an incentive to use the new tools instead of just sending emails and sending documents as attachments in emails instead, basically. But what can happen, and by our experience will happen very often, is that there will be governance chaos, basically, because an Office 365 group will be created pretty much from anywhere. If you're creating a modern theme site from your SharePoint user interface, you will get a SharePoint site with an Office 365 group. If you intend to create a planner plan, you will get an Office 365 group. If you want to create a video channel through Stream, you will get a group. And if you want to create a team from your Teams client, you will get a group as well. And then people may not often realize that either. Basically, if you just want to have a plan where you can organize your tasks, where you can set deadlines, where you can see a flow chart of your tasks, basically, you may not realize that you will get a full-blown Office 365 group with a SharePoint site, with an email inbox, and everything associated to that, basically. So that is really the reason why having sort of a free-for-all configuration where everyone can create Office 365 groups freely can create problems in your organization. So basically, what you can do, and there's a few different pricing levels in Office 365 licensing, which determine what you are able to control. But with Azure Active Directory Free, which is the subscription that comes by default if you just take Office 365 into use, you can either disable group creation or you can enable group creation for everyone. Basically, there's no more fine-tuned control levels with free account than that, basically. But then if you purchase Azure Active Directory Premium for a set of users in your organization, what you can do is that you can determine select users that are able to create groups. You can determine naming conventions, as we mentioned. You can determine blocked words. You can have usage guidelines, and you can have expiration policies as well, basically. So yes, there's a bunch of these different options available, but many of them will require a separate subscription for all the users that are affected by that change, basically. But with tools such as Valo Teamwork that we have created for organizations to be better able to control Office 365 groups, to view their groups, to create groups and things like that. You can do many of these things actually without needing an Azure Active Directory Premium license for your users at all, basically. Yes, classifications is also something that comes with the Azure AD Premium license. So yes, that's a sort of introduction to what are the key challenges for Office 365 groups, why we feel that governance is needed, and then I'll give you a short introduction to what is Valo and what is Valo Teamwork in specific, and how we feel that it is an answer to all of these questions that we are having here. basically. So, in short, Valo is an award-winning digital workplace solution on top of Office 365 and on-premises SharePoint as well, if you so choose, basically. And Valo aims to be the center of all communication, social interaction and teamwork in your organization, basically. So we have a lot of features for intranet, such as news publishing, creating employee handbooks, creating quality manuals, having events, and all that kind of stuff, doing internal communications within your organization. But we also have collaboration tools to better be able to list all the groups that you are a member of, handle the creation of groups, having metadata for organizing specific groups, and things like that, basically. We have a very beautiful user experience. We believe we have been able to avoid the sort of the IT kind of look that SharePoint presents out of the box without any customizations. Of course, it works on any device. You can start using it immediately. There's no months-long implementation project that would need to take place. But at the same time, it's also customizable. If you have needs for instance, integrations to third-party systems, to your HR system, ERP, whatever, you're able. And then basically it's always up to date as well, basically. So so as it is a product, whenever Microsoft releases new capabilities, for example, into Office 365 groups, you'll be able to take use of those new functions automatically as well. We divide our product into 3 different parts. So there's a intranet product for handling the internal communications part, basically. There's the teamwork part for doing governance of Office 365 groups, team sites, and all that. And then there's the idea management part for collecting ideas from your organization, from your employees, and using gamification tools to sort of encourage idea sharing and bringing new ideas to your organization from your employees, basically. But our focus today will be on the teamwork part, basically. So yeah, what is Valo Teamwork? In short, and this is something we'll be touching on later in this webinar with a demo as well. But basically, yeah, Valo Teamwork is really one place to access all your Office 365 groups and all of your SharePoint sites as well, basically. And you can easily view in the same view, first of all the groups that you are a member of, but it's also really easy to access, for example, your SharePoint site, your conversations from Outlook, your files, your Teams team, the plan associated Power BI reports and videos and all that from a single click from your user interface as well. And not only that, but you can also discover groups. So all the public groups that are available in your organization that you may not even be aware of. Teamwork is a great tool to see what groups are there, what are available for you to join. You can have metadata on groups to be able to easier to search for groups. You can search for files and conversations within the groups as well. And we also have a great templating tool for customizing your experience, basically. So you can define that always whenever you create a new project, for example, you will have a specific type of theme there. You'll have specific channels available, or for instance, that you will always have a Yammer group for conversations, or that you will have a specific type of SharePoint site sorry, with a specific PNP template, which, for example, is specific type of list whenever you create a new SharePoint site associated with a group for your organization as well. And as said, there's a approval process that you can have in place so that you can be sure that only appropriate groups are created in your organization, basically. So, and of course, there's a life cycle for your groups, basically. So, So yes, you can order groups, they will get approved, then you will use groups for a while, and eventually they may get inactivated and deleted then really as they are deemed that the information there is not needed anymore either, basically. All right. And yes, this is what Valo Teamwork looks like basically when you open the front page. So you'll get a card view with a list of all the Office 365 groups that you are a member of, and the ones that you have marked favorites. Marked as favorite will be shown first, basically. And yeah, you'll see a nice listing of all of your groups. You'll see the number of members in each group, and then you'll see some pictures of like the first members or owners in your group as well. Behind the three dots, you'll then have easy access to the SharePoint site or to the Teams conversation or planner plan or whatever tools you want to use within your Office 365 groups. You'll also see notifications inside the group card basically for messages within your groups that you may not have read yet, basically, as well. Then there's a nice form for you to order a new group, basically, well, where you'll be able to specify things such as, for example, the privacy level of the group, if it's private group, if it's a private group or a public group, the title of the group, the address of the group, the description for the group owners, group members as well, and a specific set of metadata such as the location of the group or business unit of the group or project manager of the group or whatever metadata you want to specify for your groups, basically. And then as you place that order, it will be going into an approval queue, which will be processed as per the mechanism set by within your organization, and as soon as the order has been approved, a process behind the scenes will kick in and a group according to your specification will be created with all the associated SharePoint sites, with the Teams team and all the things that you have basically for your collaboration. There is also a view for all of your documents from within your groups. On the left-hand side, you'll see documents that you have added into your groups. And on the right-hand side, you'll see documents added by others into your Office 365 groups, basically, as well. So that if you want to have a quick glance of new documents that have been uploaded into your groups, this is a great place for you to see them. You'll also be able to see discussions from the Office, from the Outlook inbox of your Office 365 groups easily in one place. And you'll also be able to discover new groups, basically. So for all the public groups that are available in your organization that you are not yet a member of, you'll be able to browse through them here, and you'll easily be able to join the group as well. For instance, if you find a group that would be interesting to you. Of course, you'll only be able to join the public groups that are open to join. Private groups, you would need to apply separately from the group owner to be added to the group as well. Yeah, and that's in short introduction into the functionality in Valo Teamwork and the different things that we are able to do there. So now I'll hand over back to Peter for external users, basically.
Awesome, thanks, Henrik. Yeah, so I'm going to take the discussion from there. So I mean, Valo Teamworks gives you some awesome governance and user experience around provisioning and managing these Office 365 groups. I'm going to talk more about the people that are then within those groups, which may be your internal staff. I mean, that's obviously the first place where people tend to leverage Office 365 groups is cross-functional teams, projects, what have you, within your organization. But what about when those projects span your organizational boundaries? You need to bring in external people. Well, there's a couple of scenarios that we want to talk about here. I mean, in one case, you may have contract staff, for example. Maybe you've got a contract project manager who's going to be managing your project. I mean, you would use the out-of-the-box tools from Microsoft to make that person a full-fledged member of that Office 365 group. So they could use Teams, get into the persistent chat, see SharePoint for the documents, look at videos and streams, do all those things through that. But there's often a larger class of external users that are not necessarily that tight coupled in. If you think about the extranet scenario where you want to share maybe a portion of this information external to your organization, what does that look like? An extranet is a secure website that you can collaborate with your customers, your partners, your vendors, lots of different scenarios. And it can be delivered in a number of different ways. It may be that you've actually extended your public-facing website to provide a secure area to it. It may be a secure portion of the corporate intranet, or as a purpose-built standalone extranet. It's really the middle one, the secure portion of the corporate intranet, that we're going to focus on here today. So if your intranet is Office 365, it's also your collaboration space, you're leveraging Valo teamwork, all the cool stuff in Office 365 groups. How do you then expose a portion of that securely outside your organization? And that's really what we're going to focus on here for the second part of the webinar. So as I mentioned, there's lots of different potential extranet users. It depends on the type of organization that you are. Are you a public sector, a for-profit, a not-for-profit? Are these members, customers, vendors, suppliers? Lots of different scenarios that can happen as part of that. And there's a number of considerations that you need to think about as we're having a discussion about lighting up an extranet for a client. These are questions that we tend to pose to our clients. The first being, going back to the previous slide, who's coming into the extranet? What does that audience look like? Is it a single audience, or are you looking to do multiple things? Maybe you want to have a customer portal and a board of directors portal. Well, they're very different. You got to think about how you treat those two audiences appropriately through there. Is everyone going to see the same information? Is it a secure portal where you're just publishing some secure information and everybody sees it? Or is it something like a customer portal and you want to have customer purchase orders and invoices and statements of work and documents and things like that? Obviously, customer A shouldn't see customer B's information. Is there some sort of member database that we need to interface with it? Do you run Dynamics CRM or Salesforce or Blackbout if you're a not-for-profit? What does that member database look like? And do we need to have some interactions with that? That's often something that comes up in discussions that we have. Is it invitation only, or can people self-register? Do you know who all those external people are, or do you need people to be able to self-discover and self-register? And we have a couple options around that we're going to discuss between public and private self-registration, which sounds like an oxymoron, but hold that thought. We'll actually explain what that means a little later. And if there is self-registrations, who approves that? How does that process work? What's your governance around that process? Are they just coming into this extranet, or are there other systems? You have other SaaS solutions, custom line of business applications that you want to expose to those external people as well. How's the authentication going to work across that? Is there single sign-on and things like that you need to be aware of as part of that? So we're going to talk about two styles of extranets. There's the one-to-few and the one-to-many is how I like to categorize it. And the one-to-few, I mean, that's kind of the example I was giving at the beginning, where you've got your, say, contract project manager that's working on the project. You've got a few of those working on a project. You can use the out-of-the-box invitation process and directly invite them in and work with them on that. You don't necessarily have to invite them into the entire Office 365 group. You can get quite granular. You can invite them just into a site, into a library in a site, into a folder, or even into just a single document. In fact, this is how Henrik and I collaborated on this PowerPoint presentation that you're seeing right here, was we had it in our Envision IT Office 365. I shared a editable link with Henrik, and he was able to come in and edit that PowerPoint presentation. We were working against a single version of the truth, which is the nirvana of keeping documents in SharePoint rather than emailing 20 meg PowerPoint files back and forth between us and not being effective from a collaboration point of view. So in that one-to-few scenario, the out-of-the-box Office 365, SharePoint external sharing, they actually work really well, and we encourage our clients to do that. Well, when you get into the one-to-many, it gets a little more challenging. You've got large numbers of users. It could be hundreds, thousands, even hundreds of thousands of users that need to come into that extranet. That sort of one-of sharing style starts to break down from that point of view. That's where we need to provide some governance. It may be strictly publishing, or it could be collaborative. You just need to securely publish that information out, or do you want people to edit documents with you collaboratively as part of that? Is it a secure website? Is there a public portion to it? Often there's a self-registration component to it, profile management. There may be integration into Dynamics CRM or Salesforce, things like that as part of that as well. So talking about the different sharing options, I've mentioned the Office 365 external sharing. This applies to SharePoint Online, has its own abilities around that, but Office 365 groups and Microsoft Teams does as well. Streams, they're doing a good job of expanding that external sharing across the Office 365 product suite. There's also what's called Azure Active Directory B2B, which stands for business to business. And this is a way to share at the Azure Active Directory level, and then those permissions and groups that you make people belong to with those external identities can be used across Office 365. And that's one of the ones that we're going to focus in on today. The third scenario is Azure Websites, which is really if you've got a publishing model where you say, I just want to securely publish this content out. We actually have a product, part of our Extranet User Manager suite called Extranet Publisher that allows you to take content in Office 365 and publish it out to a secure Azure website. Makes it very easy to tightly control the user experience, the login process, how all that works, but it doesn't provide all the collaborative capabilities of Office 365. So it depends on the audience and the target and what that looks like. So coming back to that one-to-many extranets, we have the one-to-few and the one-to-many. So within the many, we do have, as I've mentioned, this collaborative versus publishing. So the collaboratives, yes, I want to work on documents themselves. I need to interact with you and collaborate with you. Typically, that's the Azure AD B2B. The publishing side, where you just want a one-way push private content out. There may be some limited feedback, file upload, things like that. That's where we do the Azure publishing side of things. We're going to focus again more on the collaborative side here. That's what really fits nicely with Valo teamwork. So kind of giving you some of the challenges here, why Extranet User Manager? What does it bring to the table as part of that? And it depends whether we're talking about Office 365 or on premises. I should have mentioned before, both our product, Extranet User Manager, and Valo's Teamwork product, both work with Office 365 and SharePoint on premises. We're mainly focused on 365 because that's where we get the broader groups and governance side of things, but the solution is equally applicable from an on-premises SharePoint installation point of view. So the main challenge is that external sharing features built by Microsoft, as awesome as they are, they're really not scalable when you get into large numbers of external users. Azure B2B solves some of that, but it's really not end user friendly. If you haven't gone into the Azure portal yourself before, it is very much an IT administrator portal. It's kind of overwhelming. It's not something that you want to send your business users to. There is delegation options in there. It's kind of all or nothing from that point of view. There's no self-registration. There's no integration to line of business systems, no integration to on-premises AD, which is a challenge if you've got some on-premise systems you want to make part of the solution as well. So where Extranet User Manager comes in is it provides the self-registration, the profile management, the delegation options through there. And as you're using our product to create users, to create groups, to put users into groups, under the hood, we're putting all of that into Azure AD and we're managing that Azure AD B2B process. We send out the invitations, Azure AD manages the login and the single sign-on, and we manage all the group membership from a permissions point of view. So it gives you a lot of value from a governance point of view and from a scalability point of view. If you're on premises, we can actually go further. We can act as the identity provider, provide a very user-friendly, highly optimized from user experience point of view, single sign-on, not just to SharePoint, but to other on-premise or cloud-based apps. It's not forms-based authentication. It's using modern authentication technologies like OpenID Connect. It's fully branded from a registration and login experience point of view. We support forgotten password reset. We support multi-factor authentication if you want to use text messages or Microsoft Authenticator, for example, to do the MFA. Those are options that we're looking at. And we support everything from SharePoint 2010 all the way up to 2019, which is the current shipping version, as well as other things like Azure Websites, SaaS applications, portals, custom applications. We've got clients that have integrated into a lot of different types of applications. So a quick rundown on features, and then we're going to switch into demo mode from there. So there's sort of an admin side to it and an end user side to it. So the end user side deals with profile management, and this is a highly customizable page here. We're showing you the out of the box one. You can add and remove profile fields as fits to your organization. The key ones for us are name and email address. That's kind of what connects everything together from a security point of view. Beyond that, you can go from there. If you need to integrate this profile in, say, with your Dynamics CRM, that's something that we've done in a number of implementations as well. Other things like change your password, reset forgotten password. If we're using the on-premise install, we certainly support that as part of the end user. There's an admin portion. I'm going to take you on a bigger tour of this in a minute, but basically this is not just for your IT administrators, this is intended for your business owners as well. Delegation is a big part of our product, and the ability to delegate down to say, hey, business owner, I'm going to let you manage users in your groups, but you're not going to be able to create new groups, you're not going to be able to configure the settings of the system. This is all security trimmed based on what rights you have through there. So you can search, add, edit, import from Excel, both users and groups, so it's very easy to manage those folks from there. Branding is important, so the login experience, the emails, that's all part of the availability to brand all that through there. This delegation I mentioned is a key part. IT really doesn't want to be a gatekeeper here. They want the business to be able to invite people in themselves, but they want to know that it's properly governed and managed from that point of view. So that's what we provide is that secure and governed way to delegate that user management. And it can be even delegated external to the organization. Maybe you've got a partner, you want to allow them to invite other folks from their organization in. We actually have a number of ways that we can provide that. We're going to show you some of those. Self-registration is a key part as well. Not all of our implementations have this, but I would say the majority do. The ability for people to come in and fill in self-registration. As we get into the private registrations I'm going to show you in a minute, that just increases the value of this as well. We can have custom approval workflows around this, and the actual editing of this form to customize and tailor it is something that can be done just through some HTML editing. So you don't need to be a hardcore developer. You do need some HTML development experience to customize this, but we've made it as simple as possible to do those customizations. As I mentioned, works with everything from SharePoint 2010 to 2019, as well as Office 365 in the cloud. It's very straightforward to set up from that point of view. It's fully adaptive, which means that whether you're on a mobile device, a tablet, a desktop, it's going to adapt to that particular screen size that you're working on and provide a great user experience, not just for the end user pages, but for the administration pages themselves as well. It can be hosted up in Azure, so if you want to keep a fully cloud solution, or if you prefer to have it in your on-premise service, we do support that option as well. Okay, so let's go from there and actually go into a demo. So what we've done is we've kind of, to be honest, a little bit of duct tape and binder twine here of connecting Extranet User Manager and Valo together. We treated it as a proof of concept and said, hey, what can we make happen here, and how can we illustrate this and present this out? So it's not by no means a fully baked integration. It's really intended to expose what's possible and then just get ideas going from there. So the scenario that we're going to go through here is we have an Office 365 sample site. So we have a demo tenant called eumdemo.sharepoint.com. We have Valo Teamwork installed in that tenant, and we also have Extranet User Manager installed at login.eumdemo.com, connected up to that. And what we're going to walk through is provisioning of the Office 365 groups through Valo Teamwork. So the stuff that Henrik was talking about of how Valo provides a nice interface and provides governance around that process, we're going to actually walk you through that process. Now we've extended that with Microsoft Flow to provide some workflow around approvals and connections into Extranet User Manager from there. So we're going to use Azure AD for the internal users, but the external users are going to come in through Azure AD B2B. So they're going to go through the regular Microsoft login form, but their accounts are going to be managed with external Extranet User Manager. So let's actually flip over to that and have a look at that. So if we come in here, this is our eumdemo.sharepoint.com site, and we have Valo Teamwork installed here. Now we don't have very many groups set up here. We actually went through and cleaned up and tidied up a bunch of our test groups we had. We just got a project template and a webinar demo one. I'm going to come back to the project template in a minute. I'll use that as a baseline of what we want project sites to look like. So I can dive into either of these sites here. This is all security trim, so if I didn't have rights to these sites, I wouldn't see them. I can favorite them. I can pull this down to say I want to go to SharePoint or to the files or to Planner, all the various different things I can do through there. What we want to focus on first is the ability to create a new group. So you remember in Henrik's talk, unless you have Azure AD Premium, you only have a very broad button in terms of control around creation of new groups. You can either turn it on for everybody or you can turn it off for everybody. So what we encourage you to do is turn it off for everybody, have Valo Teamwork in there and say, well, now this is your place to create new groups. And then you've got all the governance and process around that. So when I pull this down, I've got a number of different group templates that I can choose from. And you can extend this, you can create your own templates through there. We're going to use the project template. So I say I want to create a new project group. There we go. So I can decide whether this group is private or public. It just means can people within my organization self-discover this group and add themselves to it. I'm going to keep that open for that. We'll call this webinar demo 2. We'll get very creative with our names. We'll do the same thing for the description. I'll leave myself as an owner. I'm not going to add any members right now, but I am going to allow external users through here. We're going to extend that process with Extranet User Manager. So let's go ahead and order that group. So what this is doing is under the hood, it's putting an order into a SharePoint list that we want to have some approvals around. So I actually use Microsoft Flow here, and I've got a flow set up that's wired off of that. So if we have a look at this particular flow, I can use this test feature to actually kick it to get it to execute a little quicker for us here. So I say I'll perform the trigger action because I just created an order in there. It takes a few moments, starts up there, and we'll actually see that flow beginning to go through. And we'll run through it a bit, and then I'll actually dig under the hood and show you how that's put together and what that looks like. Of course, sometimes these take a little longer to pull up. Actually, let me bring up another tab at the same time here. Then we can go back to my flows. There we go. Okay, so just while we're waiting for that to get running, let's see if that's actually going. No, still waiting. Let's have a look at what this flow is actually doing. So this Valo Teamwork site has a list called Teamwork Orders in it. That's when I fill out that form, that's where the details that I filled in actually get recorded into it. So flow is triggered to say when an item is created or modified in that list, start this off. Now we come down to this condition, we're looking for the order status is equal to ordered. That's the first stage in the Valo Teamwork flow. So if we say, oh, if that's the state that it's in, if it's yes, then we want to start an approval process. So I'm going to send an email out to myself. Now this is hard-coded to me, but we can put rules in there as to who that needs to go to with a link to the item to be approved. And then we've got a condition saying, hey, if it is approved, set the approval status to approved and send me an email. Otherwise, set the approval status to rejected and send a rejection email back from there, back to the person who actually created the initial request. So that's really what the flow is going to do going through there. For some reason, that flow doesn't want to actually fire up for me. Let me just try refreshing that. Nope. We'll go ahead and leave, come into our status on that. See if that's going from a history point of view. It is running. Okay. So there's a couple of ways. So it's now sitting, waiting for that approval step to happen. So I can come to my inbox here, and I should see an approval email that came through from Flow. Now, I didn't do a lot of work on the approval email. I should put a little more details in here as to what's actually being approved. The nice thing with the Flow approval emails when I'm using Outlook and Office 365 is right in line in my email itself. I've got the ability to do the approval, put a reason in here, submit that. So I don't actually need to go anywhere else. I can live right in Outlook and do the approval as part of that. I can also come, and you can see it just completed there because I approved that and went through and did what it needed to do. I could come into Flow itself and see the approvals there. So if I look at my history, I'll see that group approval from 16 seconds ago through there. I could look in the received when it was in a queue there and go ahead and approve it from that point of view as well. So Flow has now approved that. Now the way that the version of Valo Teamwork is working that we're running right now, it's actually using an Azure web job to do its work. So I'm just going to kick the tires on this. They have released a new version just last week. It was a little too early for us to make it part of our integration demo, where that's been converted to an Azure function, and we should be able to actually trigger that off as part of the flow. The way it's set up right now is it runs every 15 minutes. I just don't want to wait 15 minutes for that to execute through. So we can have a look at that. There's logs under the hood that show us what's happening with that job. It's basically a .NET console job that's running up in the cloud on a Microsoft VM, going through and doing its work. It takes about a minute or two to go through. We can see some of the output as it's running there. This will turn to green when it's completed from that point of view. Now, what I did in the meantime, though, was actually set up another demo site prior to this as a dry run, just to say, okay, well, if we want to go to the SharePoint site here, because it takes a few minutes for all that work to happen, let's have one available and have a look at what this looks like. Okay, so this started as an out-of-the-box team site. We did a little bit of customization to it. We changed the look of the splash page, so we took out the news section, we took out the commenting, we simplified it down just to show an activity feed and have a web part here that's showing us external members. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. And basically, that was what the project template site was. We snapshot that and we create a template from it. And then each time we create a new site, we just apply that template to it, and it has the same look and feel, libraries, metadata, all the information related to it gets set up as part of that. And that's the process that we're going to go through on the demo site that we're creating right now. Let's have a look back and just see if that's done. Yeah, so that's successfully run. So let's actually look at the output of step one from there. So if I refresh this page here, I now see my webinar demo 2 in here. I can click on the link there. Say, okay, let's open up that demo 2 site. Now, it doesn't have any of the customizations applied to it yet, so it's literally just the out-of-the-box team site. So we still have the news, we still have the quick links. We've got a document library view over here. We've got commenting turned on, a couple other things. So I could have made the customizations that I'm about to do part of Valo Teamwork. I've kept them with our stuff just because they're interrelated with what we're doing right now. So we have a choice whether we do it before or after through that process. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty PowerShell that's going on here, but basically there's some PowerShell that will get wired to the flow. I've kept it as a discrete step here first. And I just need to update some URLs of what it's going to run against. That is the right one, yes. Let's go ahead and let that run. So this is going to do a couple of things. It's going to create in Extranet User Manager a group for the external users on this site, and it's going to set up some permissions in there. It's also going to apply a template to that site. And it takes 3 or 4 minutes to run through that process. So let's take that time and come over to our Extranet User Manager product itself. So this is our admin console that I was showing in the slides, and I'm currently logged in as what's called a configuration editor. So I have the ability to add and edit both users and groups, and I can do configuration of the system if I want to change what the outbound emails look like and things like that. All of that is available to me. Normally, when somebody requests a new group through Valo Teamwork, we would make them what we call a group owner, in which case all they see is this user management section there, and they would be able to add users to the groups that they own. So let's have a look at that for a second here. I come into the search user. I can bring that up, and I can see what users that I currently have in the site. So I've got a couple of test accounts here. I've got a Peter Carson 1 test account that I've been using that we use as part of our demonstrations. We also have the ability to manage groups. So if I come back to my group search here, that PowerShell must have gone through already because it's already created this webinar demo 2 group for us that's going to be associated with that site that we just created. We have the previous one, the project template, some others through there. If I look at the webinar demo 1, I can see the details of that group, what's its name, who are the owners. We haven't set up any owners in here just yet, and who are the members of this group. And by being a member of this group, the idea is you have access to that SharePoint site. Now, a couple of fields that are interesting here is this available for registration and publicly available. And what those mean is by turning this on, it means that people who don't have accounts, who aren't associated with us yet, can publicly register for that particular group. They enter their profile information and they go into an approval queue from there. But with the publicly available off, what that means is I have to have a private link that somebody's provided to me before I can register for that group. So it's a nice way of delegating people signing up to the group. So imagine that you've got a client site that you've created, and you want a bunch of people from that client to be able to sign up and access that site. You can give it to your point of contact of that client and say, here's a link, share it as much as you want throughout your organization. Anybody that uses that link will get added to a queue to get admitted into the group. And that way I don't need to know who all those people are. I just get the approval requests coming in and either approve or deny them. And that's really the process that we're going to go through as part of that. Let's have a look and see how our site's doing. It's still chugging through. So I'm actually going to continue to work with the webinar demo 1 site that we had. So we've done some changes, as I mentioned, to the look and feel of the site. We've taken a few of the web parts out, but we've added a new one in over here. And this is our Extranet User Manager user web part. And what it's showing us is who are the members of the group that's associated to this particular site. Not the internal people, the external people. So we want to share just a certain portion of the site out with them. And what we've done from a permissions point of view in the SharePoint site itself is we've actually created a second document library called External Documents. Documents is where all our internal work is going to happen. That's where Microsoft Teams is going to be wired up. So maybe we don't want to share those documents out with our external parties. So let's create another library called External Documents and use that from a sharing point of view. So what we've done is we've given permissions in the SharePoint site to read everything in this site for users of this external group, except for this document library. And we've given them access into this external document so that they can see that area. That's a very simple example. You could have a number of different groups for different styles of people. You could have a number of different libraries. You can get fairly complicated in terms of how you structure this out and what those external audiences look like from that. But let's say we've got somebody new that we want to bring in as part of this. There's a couple ways that I can do that. I can directly invite them in if I know their profile information, but an easier way for me as an owner is to just give them a private registration link. I can use a mail to link to open a mail client, or I can simply just copy that private registration link and say, here, use this link and you'll be able to register for this group. So let's actually go through what that scenario looks like. So if I flip to another browser window for a second here, and we come over here, and we say, okay, this is actually showing us what the public registration looks like. So this form would be publicly available. Anybody could register, but they're not going into a particular group. Sorry, everything's being a little slow for me this afternoon. Let me skip ahead while that's going. So I'm going to paste that full link that we had. And it's going to bring up the same registration form as I see for the public one. What we're not showing on it just yet, which we need to, is an indication that I'm actually registering for a private role. And I need to know that good. So there's a secret that I've been given as part of that. So I'm going to use one of our other accounts here. And go ahead and register that account. Okay, so if I come back to my user search here, I'll get an email approval, but I don't want to wait for emails here. We're running a little tight on time. I can see there's a pending approval account here for that EIT Valo account. What I need to do is just edit that account, switch it from pending approval to be a B2B user so they can come into that SharePoint site. And we see down here that they're already part of that webinar demo 1 group. So because they use that private registration link, it automatically put them in the group. And as the business owner of that group, all I need to do is review their profile information, say, yeah, that all looks good, and go ahead and update that. What that's going to do is it's going to send a welcome email out to that user from there. So if we come back to our mail over here, there's actually 2 emails that go out. There was, the first one was to me just saying, hey, thanks for requesting an account and you need to be approved before you get it. And the second one is the important one that says, hey, welcome to the intranet. You've been invited to access this. So let's just open this up. And we haven't done a lot of branding on these emails, but as I mentioned, they are fully customizable to the client implementation. Come on, Office 365. There we go. Okay. Actually, the formatting's not great on here because what I actually want to do, that should be a clickable hyperlink. Okay. I want to go through the whole login process with you just to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to open an incognito window and say I'm accepting that invitation on behalf of that EIT Valo user. So the first thing that happens is I need to sign into my account. So it already knows, hey, I'm coming from this debit EIT Valo. So let's go ahead and put the password in for that. Yes, I want to stay signed in. Now, Azure Active Directory is going to explain to me that, hey, you've been invited in by Envision IT into this external site. So we want to be able to sign you in and read your profile information as part of that. So let's go ahead and accept that. And where we're going to end up is a page that lists all the sites that I have access to. So part of the script, we don't have time today, unfortunately, to dive into that, has set some permissions on this sites list to say which sites do I have access to as an external user. The only one I have access to is this webinar demo one because I got put into that group for it. So I can click on the link here, go over to that site, and I'm now in that webinar demo one site. Let me just expand that up. We've got some issues with SharePoint Framework web parts for external users. We're still working through that. The key thing I want to show you over here is notice on the list of document libraries, I've got that external documents, but the documents library, the one that gets used by teams and internal staff, it's not even visible to me because that's being turned off from a permissions point of view. So you can get quite creative in terms of how you assign the permissions in the SharePoint site to the groups that you brought in there. So I realize now a minute over on our presentation. This is actually the first time we've given this particular talk, so we didn't get a chance to kind of time check and validate through here. Let me come back to the presentation deck just to wrap things up from here. So don't want to keep people over time here. Just a quick note, though, we're actually giving another webinar next week on developing customer connectors. This is a repeat of a talk I gave at Microsoft Ignite here in Toronto back in January. It really extends what I was showing you with Flow, Power BI, and Power Apps in terms of how you connect those applications in. So how do we wire it into things like Valo Teamwork or Extranet User Manager? And then if you're going to be down at SharePoint Conference North America, we're going to be exhibiting at a booth down there in May. By all means, come by and check us out. So from there, I don't want to hold anybody further from there. We can take follow-on questions through email from there. I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you also on my behalf for all of you listening to the presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Henrik.